Scholastic Audio presents In the Spirit of a Dream, 13 Stories of American Immigrants of Color, developed Imamura. Narrated by Robin Miles. Text copyright 2021 by Aida Salazar. Illustrations copyright by Alina Chow, Bianca Diaz, Dion MBD, Famida Azim, Gabi D'Alessandro, Jose Ramirez, Ken Daly, Nicole Shu, Paulo D. Campos, Rahele Jomepor Bell, Tracy Guiteau, Vanessa Flores, and Yaz Imamura. Production copyright 2022 by Scholastic Inc. In the Spirit of a Dream. Illustrated by Alina Chow. We set out across continents, oceans, and borders to find a place where we have been told our dreams can be made. The United States of America. We come as migrants, often unwanted, to this country that will always belong to the First Nations to inhabit it. Was built largely by those enslaved and forced here, together with those who are immigrants like us. We follow a dream that doesn't always come true. Sometimes it fades before us, yet we persist and pursue it to awaken a future of our own. These are some of our stories, the songs of our spirits, our longings, the challenges, and the heights to which we have risen in search of fulfilling our wildest imaginations. Alejandro Albor, Paralympic hand cyclist. Illustrated by Bianca Diaz. At 15, Alejandro came to the United States from Mexico with his family to labor as farm workers. A dreamer driven to fit in, to learn English, to rise and be a pro boxer one day. Not soon after, his bright life was nearly extinguished when the car he was driving collided with an oncoming train. He survived the wreckage without the use of both his legs. As his body healed, the sun of hope began to shine, illuminating new ideas and abilities. Alejandro propelled himself into hand cycling. With each pedal and stroke of his three-wheeled machine, moved by the strength of his arms and the determination to do something great, he became a Paralympic athlete. The skill and radiance of his racing pushed hard against any wind, leading him to win 2 Olympic medals for the U.S. Ultimate symbols of a dream. Anusha Ansari, astronaut. Illustrated by Rahele Jomepor Bell. With her little feet planted on Iranian soil, Anusha wished to be an astronaut, to fly into space and soar among the stars. But the Iranian Revolution came, and the horrors of that war tried to wipe those dreams away until she came to the United States. Here the many languages that surrounded her flew into her ears and stayed. English, French, and Russian. She never forgot the beloved Persian sounds of her birthplace. The languages of math, science, engineering became her strength. Her ticket to become the first female private space explorer and the first astronaut of Iranian descent to float among the stars. Ayub Khan Omaya. surgeon, and inventor. Illustrated by Nicole Shu. A renaissance coursed through Ayub's veins, a limitless bounty of what he could do. He excelled with bravado as he swam into a national championship, boxed with skill for rounds in the ring, and rode for miles along a river. He invented things that only an imagination so free could bring, like an airbag helmet to help protect people when they fall. He sang operas with gusto before performing surgeries, a musical rush helping him save countless lives, like those of the man from whose head he pulled a tendril-like tumor in an operation lasting 19 hours. Ayub and his light came from Pakistan. He made history in the United States and beyond with his inventive dreams, his unstoppable courage, and his love of life. Cándido Camero, percussionist. Illustrated by Ken Daly. Cándido was a virtuoso percussionist when he left Cuba for New York City in the 1940s with nothing but the dream to share the magic of his music with the world. A conga drummer whose Afro-Cuban blood lined the perfect rhythms that he played, Cándido was one of the first to bring these sounds to jazz. Cándido's dream rose like an incantation. He played with the most famous jazz orchestras around the country. His drumming popped out of crackly radio speakers, clubs, and dance halls alike. He's spellbound with his innovation, played 3 congas when others played 1, added a gyro and bell when others never imagined. He tuned his conga drums to play a melody, to create a sweet and rhythmic tune. But he endured segregation and racism because he was black in his new country. He often had to sleep on the tour bus because whites-only hotels didn't allow him to stay, or enter through back doors of whites-only clubs where he was the featured performer. Cándido, a pioneer of jazz and the Afro-Cuban mambo. Cándido, whose love of the drum and wish to spread the joy of his music drove him to persist. Conceição Damasceno, choreographer. Illustrated by Paulo de Campos. A chrysalis lived in Conceição's heart that nested a dream to dance, to flutter and glide above the Brazilian Bahia where she was born. The movement of samba, the whirl of orishas, the blessings of her mother, the Amazon filling her lungs, opening and lifting her wings, defining the beauty of her sway. She soared, a borboleta, a butterfly in all its grace, beyond the dirt floors that raised her, beyond the dance schools that trained her. She came to land in another bay, in the United States. Here the swell of all that made her spun to full splendor with Brassarte, her very own dance studio and dance company. The numerous shows she choreographed and directed, the countless San Francisco carnivals in which she paraded, the many showcases to help other immigrant artists, the beautiful Brazilian Day and Navaje Festival she launched in the streets. She infuses each of her creations with the spirit of Brazil and makes all those who experience them feel the joy and elegance of her dream in flight. David Tran, entrepreneur. Illustrated by Alina Chow. David dreamed things would be better in the United States, that he could leave the war in Vietnam behind and find a new life brimming with possibility, that he could stir all of his hope into a spicy sauce people would like. David made his first batch in Vietnam and called it pepper satay. He put it in recycled baby jars and sold it while pedaling his bike through the war-torn streets of his neighborhood. He so believed in his tasty sauce. This dream sailed across the sea with him when he escaped Vietnam on a ship called Huy Phong. Huy Phong, the perfect name for his new company in his new home. David's dream was on its way. Encouraged by the smiling faces of his customers and his family, who cheered and helped him too, he continued to stir and mix until his most delicious, most spicy, most secret and ooh-ahing sauce was ready. David named this one Sriracha. Everyone raved about Sriracha's yumminess as word moved from happy mouth to happy mouth. Now the world over enjoys the recipe of a man who dared to stir hope into a sauce. Dikembe Mutombo, humanitarian and basketball player. Illustrated by Dion MBD. When Dikembe came to study at Georgetown University in the United States, he dreamed of becoming a doctor, to speak to his patients in the 9 languages he would learn, to make his family of educators and those in his community in the Democratic Republic of the Congo proud. He stood taller than anyone on campus and was soon recruited to play basketball for the first time. His newfound talent flourished on the court. Swoosh, block, pass, block again. He did things he never imagined. Unleashing his fierce shot-blocking power from college to many teams in the NBA, Dikembe rose to become a 4-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year and an 8-time All-Star. Swoosh. Fans cheered for the Congolese man with a heart of gold who never forgot the root of the one dream he held close, to lift people with medicine. When he retired from the NBA, he built a modern medical facility back home. He and his talents, the pride of the Congo. Edwige Dontika, author. Illustrated by Tracy Guiteau. Stories slid into Edwige's curious mind when, as a child, she listened to her elders retell their lives and myths in the midst of blackouts on her island home of Haiti, a home she would leave for the U.S. when she was 12 years old. As she grew in Brooklyn, the shape of her life was sculpted by new city streets that moved her, by what she remembered, by the will to read, to write, to dream, to call into being her own stories whispered by ancestors, and an abundant imagination. What sprung forth was a lineage of books, one after the next awarded for excellence, with stories of Haitians, immigrants, women, brothers, and families who collect their pains and their loves and offer them in the palms of their warm hands. The stories Edwige tells resound, creak-crock, a Haitian call and response, carried into fullness by her immigrant pen, and the breath of the island. Ilhan Omar, Representative to Congress. Illustrated by Famida Azim. Ilhan began to understand injustice when the war in Somalia sent her away from home, forced her and her family into a Kenyan refugee camp. The dream for shelter and safety, a distant garden of longing. They came to the U.S. to plant new seeds, asylum granted. Here, Ilhan began to turn what was thought of her as girl, as Muslim, as refugee, into a bouquet for others, into a heart that mattered, into a voice that could speak against injustice, to try to undo its terrible grip on those who suffer. Her light and knowing bloomed in the service of each community she touched, as citizen, as educator, as organizer, as legislator, responding with grace and dignity when faced with violence and hate. Her gifts grew so full, she was elected to the United States House of Representatives, the first Somali American refugee to be elected to the House, and the first woman of color to serve as a U.S. representative from Minnesota. Her garden of justice, flowering